in exploring opportunities outside of California. So welcome to tonight's webinar. Let's get started with a couple housekeeping items first, okay? So as always, if you see, first of all, a link, a hyperlink icon on the screen at any time as we're presenting this evening, that means that there will be a hyperlinked resource for you when we send a copy of tonight's presentation to all of the registered attendees. So keep that in mind that there will be hyperlinked resources next to anything that you see this image next to. Secondly, please use the Q&A if you have questions. There is a Q&A option, and we encourage you to use that specifically and not the chat so that we can manage your questions and make sure that we're not missing any of your questions this evening. And keep in mind that we're hoping to answer your questions as we move along. So we encourage you to hold off your questions until the end because we might end up answering them as we move along. But if you just have a burning question you want to ask, by all means, please use the Q&A. And then thirdly, this webinar will indeed be recorded. It is being recorded right now, and we will post it to our YouTube channel as we do with all of our webinars, and it will be published and sent to all registered attendees as well. So you will be getting a notification after this presentation when this recording has also published on the Microsoft Teams website. But again, rest assured, it will be posted on our YouTube channel as well. And our YouTube channel is a complete archive of all of our webinars. So if you ever want to go back and watch anything from the past, they're all on there for you. So a little bit about us, and I'm sure a lot of you already know who we are, but I'm B. Nguyen, and I'm a futurology counselor. CUSD-Futureology is Capistrano Unified School District's college and career counseling program. We are an entirely free program. We consist of credentialed school counselors with an expertise in college admissions work. All of us have some kind of experience in the college admissions world, and we are data-driven. So everything that we do is based on the needs of the students in our district and what the data is telling us that the school needs or the district needs, right? So we do try to look at that to make sure that we're providing relevant services and supports to our students in the district. We offer webinars, one-on-one appointments, plenty of opportunities at school to work with students in the classroom during tutorial periods, after school, before school, during lunch, etc. So we're here to support you and your families in all things college and career related. There are 7 of us, and we are joined here tonight by one of our other counselors, Mrs. Rengifo, who is at Dana Hills High School. So if you're there, please go see her. She's amazing. And with that, I'm also going to introduce you to our special guest, Kat Delgado from Texas Christian University, and I'm going to let her introduce herself as well.
Hi, y'all. My name is Kat Delgado, and I serve as the Regional Director of Admission for TCU. My position is actually a little bit unique because I'm regionally based here in California. So there are tons of out-of-state schools that really want you to go to their colleges, and they have us, admission staff, actually live in the state of California. So I have been a regional admission counselor now for about 11 years, worked at 2 different schools, and I've worked at TCU now for 3 years, which is really great. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you all for having me. This topic is so important to me personally because I myself was a California native who went out of state for college. And so I have firsthand experience with this as a student, but then also professionally now working in the field of college admissions for the last 11 years. I get to meet California students every day and try to convince you guys to apply out of state. So thank you for having me. I'm excited to share some insight tonight, and we'll get started here soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kat. So more to come, plenty more to come from Kat. She will be showering us with her expertise and her knowledge throughout tonight. So you can look forward to that. But this is the agenda for this evening, okay? And again, for those of you who are joining just now, we will be recording this presentation. So if you miss anything from the beginning, no problem. You're going to get a recording, okay? But this is the plan for tonight. We're going to talk about the pros and cons of going out of state. We're going to talk about the financial considerations of going out of state, one of the biggest hurdles, right, of leaving the state for college. We'll talk about the application process and ways in which it might be a little bit different from applying to an in-state institution. And then we'll talk about finding a good fit out of state, right, and just in general, but specifically tonight for out of state, and tips on how to get started. Okay, so that is the plan for this evening. So First of all, a statistic for you. Okay, so nearly 1 in 5 students are enrolling in out-of-state colleges every year. To give you a concrete number, that's over 570,000 students, right? Of the two, and actually 570,000 students attending school outside of their home state every year, compared to the 2 million who are attending school in state, right? That's a big number. So there are students out there who are planning to go out of state and who end up going out of state for college. And that's probably why you're here as well, is that you are thinking about possibly being one of those 1 in 5 students, right? And again, I'll let Kat kind of weigh in on her experience, but Kat was one of those 1 in 5, right? And Kat took that huge leap in leaving California to go out of state. Do you want to speak briefly to that, Kat?
Yeah, so I don't think I actually mentioned this in my intro, but the school that I went to for my undergrad and actually my master's degree as well was Boise State University in the state of Idaho. So I, thought I was a California girl, thought I was never going to leave. And then I went to a college fair. It was the first time that I was exposed to college and out of state options. And that's where I found out about Boise State and the WUI program, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But that was a big reason why I looked at out of state options, and it worked so well for me personally, my family, our finances. And so, yeah, it's an awesome option to explore for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, Boise State is a very popular school in our district, right? Like students are pretty enthusiastic about Boise State for a number of reasons, and obviously TCU is as well. So you are just the perfect fit for tonight's presentation. But moving on, okay? So let's talk about pros and cons, considerations, all right, of going out of state. So first of all, let's talk. I'm just going to keep Kat on the screen with me because we're going to be talking back and forth. But let's talk about the benefits of going to school out of state. Okay, so first consideration are the pros. What's in it for you, right? So first of all, going out of state really exposes you to a new community. Now, going to college, period, will expose you to new groups of people, which is a phenomenal thing, right? But there is something about going beyond state lines that will expose you to entirely new groups of people, new cultures, new ways of being, right? Every state has their own they're kind of known for their own things, right? They have their own reputations. The people in the states are different. And this will give you an opportunity to meet new people and to build new communities and to be able to embrace new communities as well. A very important kind of component of going out of state, and something that I find students who are coming back are saying are a huge benefit, is that that community just expands so much by going out of state, right? Um, Personal growth. Okay. So another benefit of going out of state is that as a student, right, for my students in here, you are going to be pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. You are going to be going into the great unknown for most of you, unless you're visiting or going to school in a state that you've visited before or have family in. But you're going to be pushing yourself beyond that comfort zone to gain independence, right? To gain skills to be self reliant and to be able to advocate for yourself. But the personal growth that happens when you are far, far away from home is exponential, right? It's so much more vast than if you were to be closer to home where you can access your security net, right? And then finally, professional growth. Okay, so we're thinking about the benefits of going out of state, and I think this is something that students don't think about often, is when we're thinking about long term and we're thinking about your career goals, going out of state could be a great decision based on what you might want to pursue. And it's important for you to do the research, okay? But 65% of employers say that they prioritize hiring graduates who have demonstrated adaptability and independence. So when you're thinking, well, how am I going to get a job? How's this going to help me be more employable? When people are looking for potential employees, right, candidates for jobs, they're looking oftentimes at those skills that would make a good team member. And independence, adaptability are some of the greatest skills that all employers are looking for. They need to know that you can roll with the punches, right? That you can work independently, but also with the group, right? So that could be a great motivator as well to go out of state. And then furthermore, if you look at the graph on the screen, it could be helpful to try to strategize where you might want to end up if you don't want to end up in California based on employment in that state. So I link here, this is a screenshot from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Okay, it's a government website that tells you where current jobs, where jobs are growing, right? Or where there are high numbers of certain careers in every state. The darker the color, the more jobs there are in that specific state. And for this specific example, I chose construction managers for May 2023. And you'll see states with the highest employment level in construction manager, and you'll see that Texas is at the top of that. Right? So, this is something that you might want to think about as you're thinking where you might want to go based on what you want to study, based on what you want to pursue. And the Bureau of Labor Statistics is a great way to start that kind of conversation with your family and to start that research, right? Kat, other kind of personal experiences that you want to add to the benefits of going out of state?
Yes. So that was a lot of great information. I particularly loved that last chart and link. I think that's so helpful. And I'm definitely going to use that when I present on this topic because I've never seen that chart specifically. But that's so helpful, especially when students are thinking about potential jobs and internships, right? We're thinking in the future about, okay, what do I want to do for a career? But we kind of have to backtrack a little bit too, right? Like, what do I even want to major in? And I know some of you in the room, some of you might know the area or career you might want to go into, but I want to kind of normalize it and tell you that it's okay if you don't know as well. And there are some amazing schools, both in state and out of state, that can help you figure that out. And that's what I really loved about my experience at Boise State. I'm very different now than who I was when I was 17, 18 years old. Thankfully, I've grown up a lot and I've gained independence and a wide variety of skills that I can use now at my job. But I was very different when I was 18. And I honestly had no idea what I wanted to study. So a big benefit of going out of state as I was researching was the majors just weren't as competitive as maybe some of the programs that we tend to know and love here in the state of California. Perhaps some of the schools I was looking at that time, the acceptance rates to the universities as a whole were much more attainable for me, being the undecided student that I was. So I think that is just an inherent benefit of opening up your options to great schools that are out of state. Often acceptance rates to some of these schools could be a little bit more attainable. Access to majors like computer science, business, nursing, they may be a little bit easier to get if you apply to some of these out-of-state schools. Sometimes too, we have direct entry programs that are also less competitive. So that's something that I always like to share with students at this stage of the process. Maybe if you are looking to study something within kinesiology and exercise science, and you want to do athletic training, there's incredible out-of-state programs out there that have 3+2 programs where you can save a year and graduate faster. One of my favorite things that I kind of gained, benefits that I gained from studying at Boise State specifically, was just the location and the outdoors and the weather. That was completely different experience that I had growing up in Fontana, California. We didn't get snow. I never went snowboarding or skiing. I never went to a hot springs before. So for me as an 18-year-old, that was really cool to just be in a whole different landscape and experience seasons. I think till this day, obviously I moved back to California after I graduated, got a great job, and worked in California, and now I'm close to my family. But there's something special about going to college for 4 years and just living in a completely different place than how you grew up. I love the outdoors now. I actually got married in Yosemite National Park. So I love the outdoors so much that I am always in the mountains now, which is awesome. It was a cool takeaway from college. Another benefit that I wanted to mention was sometimes out-of-state colleges might be in locations that have a lower cost of living. So we know that California is quite expensive, right? We'll talk a little bit about costs, but sometimes the out-of-state colleges that you're looking for, they're located in great cities that are still far less expensive than living in Southern California. So I think there could be some cost savings when it comes to living on campus that you might not see here in the state of California. There could be also access to some merit scholarships. We'll talk about the WUI program. Even private colleges like TCU, we still have to incentivize out-of-state students to want to choose to come to our school. And so out-of-state colleges build that into their process to award some merit. Now, all schools, it's hard to say how much merit you'll get at them, but they usually will tell you, the types of scholarships that are available for students that are applying out of state. But as far as benefits, that's kind of what I had in mind so far.
I love that. And I love that you were exposed to things that you never would have been exposed to had you not left, and it changed your outlook on life. And also, you know, speaking of just kind of going out of state and career, conversations, you're also expanding your network, right? You're expanding your network across state lines, and that can really help as well down the line if you're looking for jobs or need connections. It's great to have out of state connections as well. Even if you return, home one day, like Kat did, right? But thank you for your insight because that's invaluable coming from somebody who was able to leave the state, right? And I stayed super close to home. I mean, I was like, a 10-minute drive from school. So a totally different experience for me. So I appreciate your insight. Okay, that was benefits, many benefits, as you can see. And we'll talk more about the benefits as we go on tonight, right? But there are challenges, obviously, to going out of state. And these are considerations that we have to think about as well as, as a family. If we have parents and students in here tonight, these are conversations that you have to have together. And there are three primary challenges that I tend to see students encounter as they're considering going out of state. And one of the first ones will be the emotional adjustment of being gone. Um, being away from home is always going to be difficult, right? And there is going to be a period where you are going to have to adjust emotionally. Not all of you, but some of you. There is going to be a period of homesickness, possibly. You are going to be alone for the first time. And if you're, a flight away from home in another state, you won't have that immediate safety net with you, right? To kind of comfort you physically there with you. And so that can be challenging. You're not going to have your friends nearby. And you're going to have to do things on your own for the first time. And I'm talking like laundry, right? Maybe cooking for yourself. There are things that you're going to have to adjust to as you enter into adulthood and college life, right? So that is something that definitely has to be considered as you're thinking about going far away from home for college, is that there is going to be an emotional adjustment period. But there are ways to address that, right? It's not an obstacle that is insurmountable, right? So, a couple ways that you can think about adjusting emotionally and addressing this issue is communicating with your friends and family often, having check in times, or just making sure that you have a line of communication open with them. And with texting and calling and FaceTiming and social media, that's not usually a problem, right? It's going to be really important that you get involved on campus if you're going out of state, because that's where you will be able to develop those communities and start making those friends and building in these social networks so that you feel like you're belonging on that campus. Okay. So it's important that you get involved on campus, that you're exploring campus beforehand if you can during orientation days or even on a visit before then, to get to know the campus as well so that it's not completely foreign to you on that first day of school, and also to get to know the surrounding area as well. You should probably try to plan visits home ahead of time. I think just knowing and planning with your family when you will be home next can ease some of that anxiety about being far away from home, because you know that there will be this date in the future that you will be home for, right? And then seeking help at school if you're getting really down or you're feeling really down and out and lost and sad, right? To reach out at school, because all universities and colleges will have some kind of mental health support on campus. And it's important that you take advantage of that if you are feeling really down, and just know that you will have that support. And to find that support, look it up online, make sure you know where the building is before you start school, just so that you know that that is part of the action plan if you're feeling super low one day, right? Um, any thoughts on this, Kat, for emotional adjustment in your experience?
Yeah. I think this is definitely one that comes up for honestly almost every student that comes to college, whether you're going, 20 miles away or out of state, right? Of course, the main difference is that distance from home. Often when you go out of state, there could be a little bit of a longer distance, but I don't know anyone that hasn't experienced a little bit of homesickness, right? And I'm not going to lie, when I was in college, I experienced it too. And I remember when I came to Boise State, I was so excited, had so much fun at orientation. But I think there's, those first few months where you're kind of balancing the feelings of, okay, I'm so happy here, I'm so excited, but I'm also new and I haven't found my people yet. And then you see your friends from back home, and maybe they stayed local, so then you're missing your best friend, and you want the best of both worlds. But I promise, if you just keep getting involved, if you keep building those connections on campus, it's going to pass, right? I think that's what happened for me. Is there was a moment where I was like, oh, I'm a little homesick, because I was comparing, and missing my friends from back home. But I think as I started getting involved, as I started building those friendships, as I started finding mentors on campus, right? Seeking help at school, that could be a wide variety of ways. Maybe you actually go to one of the health services on campus. Maybe you go to a faith-based institution and you have, your church or a spiritual advisor you can connect with. Maybe you just have your hallmates on your floor, and now you guys are starting to plan, Monday night watch parties for your favorite TV shows, and you're talking to your RA, who is another student, but often a little bit older, so that you can, seek and ask some advice. So there are people on campus, truly higher education professionals. Like, our heart is really to serve students. And so admissions, housing, health services, all of your teachers, they are truly there to help students succeed. And that's every school. So I think just reaching out, getting involved, I think all of that really does help with that emotional adjustment, especially when you go out of state.
Thank you so much for that. Really good advice. Okay. As you're thinking about how to adjust emotionally. And then another hurdle or another challenge that you might encounter going out of state are the logistical hurdles, right? Emotionally, it's going to be like, oh, I miss home. I miss my friends. I miss my family. I miss my dog, right? My cat, whatever it is. But the logistical aspect of it as well can be stressful for families. For example, how are you going to get home for the holidays, right? If you have to fly home, when are you going to book those tickets? How much is it going to cost, right? That's a financial matter that we'll discuss in a little bit. How are you going to get around town? If you've never been in this town or city or whatever it is, trying to get around and leave campus on the weekends can be a challenge if you don't know how to figure out transportation. And that's another kind of big logistical hurdle, right? And if you're going out of state, but you can drive out of state, can you bring your car with you? Will the campus allow you to bring your car as a freshman or not, right? So these are things that I think you should think about, and in order to address them, right? And these are, again, are not insurmountable. They're just things that you should think about that can be hurdles if you don't plan ahead of time. So in order to prevent those hurdles from being a challenge for you and being, a roadblock that's going to upset you, we can plan ahead of time for things like that, right? So determine, first of all, how far away you're willing to go for school. Okay. And this has to be a conversation that you have with your entire family. Is it okay for you to go across the country to the East Coast? And logistically, how's that going to work? And how many times realistically can you come home each year to visit? Will it be just for winter break? Can it be for Thanksgiving and winter break and the summer? Right. So you have to think about the logistics of coming home for holidays or big family events and what that's going to look like. Okay. Secondly, to save money, you might want to think about booking trips in advance. Once you get that acceptance and you've submitted your intent to register at that school, it might be a good idea to start monitoring kayak and monitoring flight prices and booking flights ahead of time, so that you can lock in those travel dates and know that you have, an affordable way to get home for big events at home. And then to address the issue of getting around in the city that you're at, you want to plan for transportation in your new city. I worked last year with a senior at Elise Nagel High School who's now at Boston College, and we looked at the bus routes. We looked up how to get her bus pass, right? And how to pay for that and how much Boston College was going to cover for that. And we made a whole plan to make sure that she had a way of leaving campus and getting around Boston because she was going to work part-time as well. And so when you can address these things in advance, they're no longer hurdles, right? There's something that you can overcome, and then you'll feel more prepared and like able to get there. Kat, did you have any logistical like hurdles like that going to Boise?
Yeah, the first one that comes to mind, not necessarily at Boise State, but just working in this job as in general, I think one of the biggest things I hear from students and parents is that they never thought to think about how far the airport was from the college. That's what I hear all the time. They fall in love with all the schools and then they realize, oh, it's a little bit farther away from the airport. Sometimes you have to drive 2+ hours just to get to the largest airport nearby. So I think that's a tip that I would definitely research in advance. It doesn't necessarily mean that that school isn't good just because they don't have an airport there, but it is just a logistical hurdle that you might need to address, right? And as long as you can determine, okay, they might not have a close airport, but does the school offer a free shuttle? For example, my younger brother, he went to a school that was like that. It was a little bit more of a rural campus, so they didn't have a large airport nearby, but they did have a shuttle that bused the students to the airport around holiday breaks. And so that was a really nice service that my family got to utilize for my brother, and it made him feel safe. It made him feel, it helped make my parents feel confident that, you know, my brother was going to be able to go from his college back to the airport, back to home in a safe way. And so I think there are definitely ways that you can address it so that it's not off-putting.
Perfect. Thank you for that. I would not have even thought about that, but that makes sense now because when college reps come to talk to our students at Elise Nagel High School, they always tell the students how far away they are from the airport. So that makes sense, right? Because that's definitely something that you're going to want to consider. And then finally, a third challenge, one of the biggest challenges, right, to going to school out of state can be cost. It doesn't have to be. And we'll talk about affordable ways to go to school out of state for sure. Kat's going to talk about that at length, right? But cost is going to be one of those factors. So, with that in mind, how are we going to address these concerns about cost, right? What are the financial considerations as we think about going out of state? Two things we're going to focus on is the true cost of going to school out of state. And then we're going to talk about the Western Undergraduate Exchange, which is also known as WUI, so that you can understand some of the reciprocity agreements we have with other states to get a tuition discount at out-of-state universities, which we love. We love a discount. Okay, so let's first talk about the true cost of going to college. Okay, so first of all, going to any college, these are the costs that we have to consider. So for anybody in here who's going to go to a California university or out of state, these are the colleges or these are the costs that we are going to have to keep into consideration and keep in mind. Okay, you are all going to be expected to pay tuition fees. So that is the cost of learning at the school. Okay, you're all going to have to end up buying some kind of books or supplies. Of course, you can buy used. There are a lot of websites that you can go to barter with other students, all sorts of things that you can do to make it more affordable. But you are going to have to buy materials for your class, right? You are going to have to save for personal expenses when you're in college. I'm talking movie tickets, concert tickets, going out to eat every once in a while, having money to pay for an emergency last minute purchase, right? Whatever that may be. If you're living on campus at a college, you're going to be paying for housing, okay? And then in addition to that, if you're living on campus at a college, you will be paying for a meal plan. So that would be considered room and board, right? Housing and meal plan. And so these are things that are going to have to be considered no matter what college you go to if you're living on campus, whether that's in California or outside of California. These are the costs that will start amounting and accruing, right? But in addition to that, okay, some things that we're going to consider as you're thinking about going out of state, as we mentioned earlier, is going to be the cost of traveling to and from that college, right? And thinking about how much it's going to cost, how much a plane ticket will cost round trip for you to come home for various breaks, right? And what's going to make sense for your family. You might have to deal with potentially a higher cost of living. Although living in California, you are all very used to a very high cost of living. So that's probably not going to be the case depending on the state that you go to. But if you end up, you know, in New York, for example, it might be a little bit more expensive if you're living in the New York City area, right? So that might impact the cost as well of the school, and it might impact the cost of housing at that school as well, depending on where it's located. And then something kind of random, but something you should consider is like good winter clothing, right? Down jackets, beanies, mittens, gloves. If you don't have them, it's something that you're going to have to consider buying if you're going to go somewhere like Minnesota or Syracuse or something like that, right? Is the cost of like additional clothing to deal with the weather, right? So some things to think about as you're thinking about that. Now, this is a visual for you, and I share a link to this specific spreadsheet for my planners, for my numbers people, for people who need to know the exact, potential cost of going to college. This is a really helpful spreadsheet that I actually used with that student that I referred to who's at Boston College, and the numbers are changed up a bit from her situation, but this is a great way for you to begin discussing as a family what is going to be feasible for you if you're going out of state. You can easily look up the tuition and fees for any school, right? That's on their school page under financial aid or under tuition. But this spreadsheet is a great way for you to begin breaking down the true cost of going to college. And you'll see here that it breaks down funding and income at the top. So, what kind of sources of money are coming in? And then at the bottom, it's going to break down all the things you have to consider as you're going to school, right? Out of state or in state or whatever. And it'll be as specific as making sure that you have money every semester or every quarter for laundry, right? At Boston College, for example, she had to pay for laundry, and they actually give you the price of every load of laundry that you have to do. So she knew how much she had to have every month. But if you want to feel confident going into making this decision to go out of state, using a spreadsheet like this can be very helpful to give you a good sense of what that true cost is going to be and if it's going to be feasible as a family, right? But with that in mind, let's talk about how we can make this a more affordable experience for the entire family with the Western Undergraduate Exchange.
Yes. So I will talk a little bit about WUI. This is an incredible program. Of course, I mentioned that I was a out-of-state student that learned about the WUI scholarship. It literally changed my life. It helped make going out of state possible. I had this amazing experience for around the same price as a Cal State, which is awesome. So the Western Undergraduate Exchange, you might hear reps shorten it and say the word WUI. But this is a great scholarship agreement among 15 Western states and 3 US territories through which students like you from California can attend an undergraduate program outside their state at a discount. So you can go to a state like Oregon, Idaho, Montana, Nevada, right? All the Western states that you know and love. There could be a lot of great schools in there that you've heard of that you can receive a discount at. Now, this is usually for public schools only, not private schools. So keep that in mind. But you can view the list online. You can see at the very bottom here, there is a website. It's called the WICHE website. I know it's a little confusing. It's not WUI, but it is www.wiche.edu. And this is going to be the website that you can go to view all of the great WUI schools, their requirements, their deadlines, and how to apply. Now, I always encourage students to check the university website always, because sometimes these third-party websites, they're slower to get updated, right? But Boise State, Oregon State, University of Utah, their website is always going to be the most up to date. So make sure you go check those schools out and see what is the updated requirements. Do I have to have a minimum GPA? Do I have to submit test scores? Each school will have different requirements. So that is something to know. But there are over 170 participating public colleges and universities that you can choose from. Sometimes at these schools that have WUI, there could be certain majors that are exempt. At a lot of the colleges, though, all majors are available for their WUI program. You just have to kind of check for each school that you're interested in just to make sure that the major you're looking for is actually eligible to receive WUI. I just looked up some stats actually on the WICHE website for WUI, and in the 2023-2024 cycle, 18,425 California students chose WUI schools in the West, which is incredible. That literally means right under 20,000 high school graduates left the state of California to go to a WUI school, which is incredible, saving billions of dollars on their tuition and getting a really amazing, meaningful out-of-state experience. The top 3 out-of-state WUI schools for California undergrads, the schools that they went to and chose were the University of Utah, Northern Arizona University, and University of Nevada, Reno. Other schools you may know and love are schools like Boise State and Oregon State and ASU. And so I really, really encourage students to check out WUI. It's an incredible opportunity for you to go out of state at a really affordable cost. Now, on the next slide, we can kind of talk a little bit about cost comparison. I love this chart because this, if you're visual like me, this really helps you kind of break down what the cost of going to college could look like. So here we have an example of a public university for a California resident, right? A school that we love, SDSU. We have a public university that's out of state, University of Oregon, go Ducks. We have a private university, USC, and then we have a WUI school, Western Washington University. So of course, in that first row, you can see the tuition and fees, right? These are fixed numbers for each school. For a public out-of-state school, there is going to be an out-of-state cost. So for the University of Oregon, you can see that sticker price for the tuition is going to be a little bit higher. For private institutions, there's no difference in the tuition for that school's in-state student population and their out-of-state student population. So Californians and Idahoans and Texans are all going to pay the same price if they go to USC. Now you can see Western Washington University with the WUI. Most likely their out-of-state tuition is going to be very similar to the University of Oregon. However, with that scholarship, that reciprocity, students from California can go to Western Washington at a reduced rate. Now that's going to be about $14,000 for tuition at that school. Another thing to point out here that I think is really telling is that housing and meal plan, right? We've kind of talked about the benefits of going out of state. Potentially there could be lower cost of living. We often see that in the surrounding areas, maybe near the college. So for housing and meal plans, it's always going to be a little bit more expensive to live on campus. You can see the differences between California and maybe Washington or Oregon. You're going to save close to $5,000, if not more, dollars per year on housing alone when you choose to go out of state, which is really cool. Books and supplies, personal expenses, these are typically what we call indirect costs, mainly so because you can buy books at, retail price, you can rent them for cheaper. Some books are required for your classes, some are not. You can buy them at the bookstore or you can buy used books. Personal expenses also are variable costs because some of you may spend a lot on travel to and from school. Some may have less costs, right? So these bottom two are pretty variable depending on your situation, but you can see the total cost per year. So that's going to be what we can kind of take a look at, right? SDSU, this is going to be the total cost before any financial aid, $36,000. University of Oregon is going to be $64,000. A private university such as USC, going to be right under $100,000. And then of course, WUI schools, right? Our example for WUI here is going to be about $33,000. So this is, of course, is going to be that total cost before aid. Now, I always like to encourage folks to look at what the cost of attendance is at a school, right? But also get to know the university, reach out to the admissions office, get to know what your chances are of getting some financial aid. That could be in the form of a merit scholarship, that can be in the form of need-based financial aid. And then when you do that, you'll have the chance to fill out a net price calculator. A lot of schools have maybe net price calculators where you can estimate, okay, with my GPA, what type of scholarship am I potentially able to get at this university? That might be able to help you in the early stage of the college search process as you build your list. And that can, of course, help you later down the road when you start receiving your acceptance letters, you start getting financial aid packages from your schools that you've been admitted to, and you can start to get to know what that bottom line is for you to attend that respective university. Going on to the next part of the presentation. So I want to talk a little bit about the application process going out of state. Of course, we know that in-state, if you're applying to the UCs or the Cal States, they have separate applications for those groups of colleges, right? When you apply out of state, you might be asking, well, where do I apply? Often, all of our schools, we do have what we call a university app. So you can always go to our direct website and you can apply to TCU or Boise State or University of Oregon online. Now, I'm sure some of you in the room have heard about the Common Application. This is a great way to apply to a wide variety of colleges out of state. Many of us are on the Common Application. I think there's at least 1,000, probably more, but there's hundreds and thousands of colleges and universities on the Common Application. And so this is great because you can fill out the Common Application, answer your essay once, maybe fill out a couple other additional pieces for the schools on your list, and then hit submit. When we kind of consider deadlines and the types of schools you might be applying to, typically with out-of-state schools, we could have different deadlines. So it's not like the UC system or Cal State system where there is just one deadline. If I were to give you, an idea of when most schools have deadlines, usually it's November 1st. Sometimes it's November 15th. So usually around November, December, schools could have deadlines for early action. So I'm saying a lot of terminologies here, right? In the admissions process, some schools may have set deadlines. And so you may start hearing terms like early action, early decision, regular decision. These are set deadlines that we might have throughout the year where students will apply. So for example, TCU, we have an early action deadline on November 1st. We also have a early decision deadline. That's also on November 1st. The main difference is one is binding, one is non-binding. So some of the colleges that you may apply to out of state will have binding agreements where if you apply as an ED student, you are committed to that school, right? So you have reflected, this is where you want to be. Most students apply in non-binding rounds. Regular decision is another one you may have heard of. That typically is in the spring. And so you may choose to wait to apply to a school in about January or February for regular decision. Some schools like Boise State, they have a rolling admissions process. And so they don't have early action, they don't have early decision. They process their applications on a rolling basis. And so there's no actual deadline. You can actually start their application very early in August, as soon as it opens, get that completed in September or October. And it could be one of the first schools that you hear back from, which is really great. That could really give you some good momentum for the schools that are rolling. You can kind of get those out of the way and then work on your essays for those schools that have later deadlines. Now, when we think about the additional requirements, what are the materials that I'll need to submit to even apply out of state? Some schools, all you really need is a transcript, maybe test scores. Sometimes schools will make decisions purely based off of academic criteria. Schools like TCU, we have a holistic review process. So a holistic review process means that we are looking at your academic information, of course, but we also really want to know who you are as a student. What are you passionate about? What stories are you wanting to share with us in your essays? We want to hear your voice. We want to see how you spend your time inside and outside of the classroom through your activities list. We want to hear from your teachers, right? Your counselor. And so that is a holistic review. Colleges might have additional requirements in order for you to apply. All of this information is always going to be outlined on their website and even in the Common App. So you can check what a university is looking for and expecting as you apply. Some schools may even request that you interview. Sometimes these items are optional. So I highly, highly encourage you as you research, make sure you stay organized, download those Excel sheets, write this all down. It's funny, my husband is actually applying to graduate school. And so we're kind of doing this admissions process with him through the graduate school lens, but a lot of the skills transfer to any student just applying to admissions. I've been telling him, hey, you got to write all this stuff down because it's too much information for one person to remember in their head. I think one of the biggest tips I have is that a lot of schools do things kind of differently. And so I really encourage you to stay organized as you write down all the additional requirements. The last thing on this list before we move on to eligibility. So the CSS profile, this is a financial aid form that is administered through the College Board. Most of you have probably heard about the FAFSA. A lot of private colleges might use the CSS profile. Typically, the CSS profile is how we as a university administer our institutional aid. So TCU is a school that does use the CSS profile. All colleges will accept the FAFSA, and some may have an additional financial aid form that you can fill out. If a school has a CSS profile, I typically encourage students to submit it if you are looking for need-based financial aid. For example, this is a great way for students that are just applying to TCU to be considered for the pot of money we have reserved for TCU applicants only, right? And so that's another great way for you to be considered for more financial aid. Now, eligibility requirements. This is going to be so critical when applying to out of state, right? I was just speaking to a counselor about this because in the state of California, of course, you kind of grow up hearing A through G requirements, right? What do I need for college in California? Out of state colleges might have a different process, believe it or not. And so it is important for you to check in with all the different colleges just to make sure that you are meeting the eligibility requirements in order to apply, right? What are those colleges' expectations for you in high school? How many English, how many math, how many language are they looking for? So make sure you check in with the colleges that you're looking at in your high school to make sure that's clearly articulated on your transcript.
All right. Thank you for all of that. A lot of the important logistical pieces, right? As you're thinking about applying to a college senior year. Okay, so now we've talked about the pros and cons, the financial considerations. Let's move on to finding a good college fit for you as you are thinking about actually exploring schools. Okay, so you've heard it before. If you've attended any of our webinars, you know that we encourage students to look for schools that are a good fit for them through the lens of three specific factors: social, academic, and financial, right? Or social, financial, and academic. But let's kind of break this down a little bit more and talk about social fit, first of all, through the lens of looking at out-of-state colleges. Okay, so socially, we want to make sure that if you're going to go to a college, that it's going to align with your values, right? With what you want out of an environment, with what you just hope the vibe to be at the school. But if we're thinking about out of state, we're going to think specifically about some of these things. Okay, first of all, weather. You need to think about what weather you're willing to endure as a Southern Californian baby protected from all weather, right? So, are you going to be okay with a Syracuse, upstate New York winter? Are you going to be okay with going to University of Wisconsin or University of Minnesota, where there are literally like hamster tunnels to get you from one building to another because it's so blistering cold outside, right? Think about what you're willing to tolerate or what you would love to be in, for example, if you're a snow person, because that's going to be important. I can't state that enough, how important it is for you to think about what's going to be physically comfortable for you, right? From a climate perspective. Secondly, think about the want to be in a college town? Do you want to be in a rural area? Do you want to be in the heart of the city? Because that will obviously drive the types of schools that you're looking at. And if we have time, I'm going to show you a tool to use to do this exact thing. Okay. Proximity to extended family or friends. Maybe it would make you more comfortable or your family more comfortable if you decided to go out of state, but it was near grandma or if it was near your aunt, right? Or cousins that are in college as well. So think about that as far as strategizing what might be a good fit. If you're a little nervous about going away and you need that extra security blanket, possibly looking at states where you do have family or extended networks can make that more of an easy transition for you. Think about campus activities and organizations on campus. Again, one of the cures to the emotional adjustment piece is getting involved as soon as you can. So making sure that these campuses have ample opportunities for you to get involved in the things that you want to be involved in, right? And that requires looking at their website, looking at student life, and seeing what they have to offer. And then finally, making sure that where you're going to be is going to align with your hobbies and interests. I meet with a lot of students here who are very outdoorsy. They love to mountain bike, they love to hike, they love to ski, they love to snowboard. And a lot of these students, as you can imagine, are very interested in going to Colorado, for example, right? So think about the things that you love to do and how certain states, right, or locations will be able to afford you those opportunities to do those things that you love outside of school as well. Now, if we're thinking about financial fit from an out-of-state perspective, we want to think about things that can make it more affordable, like WUI, right? Like those reciprocity agreements. And for us, it would be WUI, because that can make it more affordable and realistic. We want to think about the cost of living in that area, because if it's a lower cost of living, it's going to make it more feasible and realistic for you to maybe move off of campus after your first year and rent an apartment, for example, right, with some friends. We want to think about scholarships. As Kat mentioned earlier, there are a lot of out of state schools out there, private and public, but especially the private schools out there that are willing to offer money to students who have great grades, right? They want to incentivize you to go to that school, to leave your California bubble. And finding schools that offer good scholarships and thinking about going out of state to get scholarships is a good strategy, right? There are students that I work with every year who are applying to programs out of state who are rock stars academically. And because they're so kind of academically inclined and do so well, they're getting offered a decent amount of money, so much so that it makes it more affordable for them to go out of state than to go, for example, to a UC, right? So think about that. Think about being a big fish in a small pond, okay, where you are just academically blowing the competition out of the water at these schools for potential merit scholarship. Use a net price calculator, right? We want to make sure that we're using any tools that we have to begin estimating the cost of going out of state. And every university and college that you're looking at will have a net price calculator for you to use so that you can get an estimate of the potential cost of attendance, right? The price that you might pay. And then you want to consider those additional travel expenses. The further away you go, typically the more expensive it'll be to fly to that location, right? So we want to make sure that you're taking that into consideration. And then finally, for academic fit, think about special programs that you might want to be a part of, right? Do you want to engage in cooperative learning opportunities where you're getting paid possibly and getting credit to work in the specific field that you want to pursue after you graduate? Because there are some really great co-op programs out of state. Drexel, for example, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, is a great co-op program, right? So think about some specific programs that might not be offered as abundantly in state as it would be out of state. I want you to think about career opportunities in those surrounding areas, just like that graph we showed earlier from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Think about maybe what you want to pursue and where those industries or those careers are booming, right? And strategizing perhaps going to a college that might be in one of those areas. And then finally, less impacted programs. And Kat mentioned this earlier, okay? And I'll give you an example of nursing, okay? Because nursing is very popular, highly impacted in the state of California. It's really hard to get into a nursing program, right? But I was talking to a senior this year who got into some amazing direct entry nursing programs out of state. And not only that, they were able to obtain almost full ride scholarships to those programs, okay? So do not despair if you are interested in a highly impacted majors such as nursing and engineering. Know that there are over 2,600 universities across the country, and a lot of them are not going to be as impacted as some of our in-state institutions, right? So it's a great thing to think about, especially for my nursing and engineering students. I'm just going to throw that out there. There are some really great programs out of state that you can consider that you can even get money from. Now, as an example, I'd love for Kat to talk about TCU through the lens of kind of social, financial, and academic fit. So you can begin thinking about what that looks like as you're thinking about like, what should I look for in a school as I'm researching all of these schools in state or not?
Perfect. Yes, I love this template. I think that you all should definitely consider these three factors as you build your list. And I would even, say, as you create your Excel spreadsheet, write this all down, right? This is just an example. I tried to use her template so that you can kind of walk through what this could look like for TCU, and then you can model this and do it for all the schools that you might be interested in. So when we think about the social aspects, right? Location, TCU, we're located in Fort Worth, Texas. Students might really like this because it is a suburban, urban city vibe, right? They want to go to kind of a bigger city. They want plenty to do. Fort Worth itself is the 12th largest city in the United States, and we are also the number fourth largest metroplex in the United States. So you can use that tool that was shared earlier in the presentation to kind of look up the jobs that are the most popular in the DFW and in Fort Worth itself. In terms of weather, very hot and humid in the summertime. I think, Texas is a very smooth transition for most Californians. I think the only difference with schools in the South, it is a little bit more humid than we're used to, but winters are super mild. You do get seasons in Texas, so believe it or not, it does snow. The photo, my virtual background behind me, is actually a snowy day on our campus, but it's nothing like New York, the Midwest, even some of the states in the Northwest. So pretty mild winters and hot and humid summers. B mentioned something, values. That's super important, right? Campuses will have vibes. Once you visit them, you can often kind of get a sense of the student body, the culture, the values of the students. For TCU, obviously, Christian is in our name, Texas Christian University. Many students apply to TCU because they are Christian, they are Catholic, they have faith in their background, but that is something that could have been on this list if that was really important to you, right? So you would write faith-based institution. That could be a positive factor for you at TCU. I included information on here about distance to the airport, of course, and I included flight time and a direct flight time at that. So from Orange County to Dallas, it is less than 3 hours to get there direct, which is really nice. Closest airport's 28 miles, so you can expect about a 30 to 40-minute Uber ride from the airport to TCU. We are a residential campus. And so for some of you, you really want to go to a college where many of the students are living on campus. Over 50% of the students at TCU live on our campus, and we do guarantee housing for at least 2 years while you're here. That could be a really positive factor for some of you. Division I school. So some of you really love sports. You're involved in it in high school. You really want to go to a super fun, spirited campus. Some of you want to go to a little bit more of a, studious campus. Maybe you don't care about sports as much. You want more collaborative learning environments, right? So for TCU, we're a Division I school in the Big 12 Conference. Very engaged campus community. We have all of the traditional clubs and orgs. Opportunities that students can get involved in socially. Now, when we look at the financial aspect of this, so TCU, we are a private school. Our tuition is about $63,000. Estimated cost of attendance is $82,000. So as a private school, that's pretty common, right? That's what you would expect. We do have merit scholarships at TCU, starting from a 3.6 to a 4.0. So there is opportunity to get some money, depending on where your GPA is. 80% of our students receive financial aid. This is the biggest tip that I encourage every single student. I encourage everyone to do this as you're looking at colleges and determining if it's a good fit for you. Always ask the colleges, are merit scholarships guaranteed at your school? Some schools might have a chart where it's guaranteed. If you meet this minimum GPA or scholarship requirement, you might get guaranteed merit. Sadly, at TCU, merit scholarships are not guaranteed. It does depend on the applicant pool from year to year. So there is a chance that you could get admitted to TCU but not get money. I put that on there transparently so that you can see that as a factor under the cost. Now, we do have FAFSA in the CSS profile as forms of financial aid documents that you can submit. Again, over 80% receive financial aid. I included the net price calculator. The cost of living is 21% cheaper in Texas than California. A big reason why many families are moving to the state of Texas. And that is a good benefit for folks that are living in the DFW. And then the average flight cost is about $250 one way. So round trip, you're right at around $500 to go to and from home to your college campus. And so you would include that in that Excel sheet for the amount of times you plan to go home. Maybe in year one, that's spring break, Christmas, and Thanksgiving. And as you get older in year two, maybe you just go home for Christmas break and you stay on campus to continue working, or you participate in an internship in the summer. Academically, so here, I always recommend students, as you kind of determine what your fit is at that college, I encourage you to look up the academic student profile for the admitted students at that school. So for TCU, it's about a 3.7 unweighted GPA. a 1280 to a 1430 on the SAT, and a 29 to a 33 on the ACT. We are a test optional school. So if you were a student and you were thinking, I actually don't want to take the test, this is still a school that could be a good fit that you can apply to. We have about 10,000 undergrads, mid-size. That could be important to you on your list. Maybe you really prefer a small to mid-size college or university rather than a big college that tends to be 20, 30, 40, or even 50,000 students. So size, often you can kind of get a feel for what size you like when you visit a college campus and go on a college tour. The average classroom size, it's about 26. That could make a difference for some of you who prefer to learn in smaller classroom sizes versus larger lecture halls. That's something that you should definitely ask when you visit campuses and as you get to know the universities. We have about a 93% retention rate. I think that's super reflective of students' happiness on our campus. I think one of the best compliments we get all the time at TCU is last year, actually, we were voted the #1 happiest school in America. So that was a really fun stat to see that TCU students were deemed the happiest last year, which was really cool. And that does, really attribute to our retention rate. Students are coming back after freshman year. They're happy. They're finding their people. They're getting involved, and they are coming back the next year. Now, academic programs. So we do have direct entry nursing and business. We have larger nursing cohorts than many in the state of California and nationally. We have a great business school, less impacted programs in very popular areas like engineering, computer science, film, and TV. So that could be a really great standout for some students that are interested in those areas, as well as we do have 3+2 programs within social work, business analytics, athletic training, and a couple more that I couldn't fit on the screen. So my best advice, as you guys kind of see this as an example, do this activity for all the schools that you love. Consider the social aspects for that college that you like. Consider the financial aspects for that school and the academics, and prioritize what is most important. I always like to say in these presentations, there is no such thing as a perfect school. There's no such thing as a school that fits every single box, right? But you as the student and as the family members can identify what are the most important factors for me in that social category. What are the most important factors for us as a family financially and academically, right? And I would encourage you to identify those earlier in the admissions process, simply because I have learned in all the years I worked in higher ed, this tends to be a very emotional process, right? You fall in love with schools, you really want to make it work. You have dream schools, right? But sometimes, you forget what those factors that were important to you earlier in the process, and then you make compromises at the end. And so you just got to know what you're willing to compromise on and know what you're willing to invest in for this college experience. So those are my final thoughts on how you can apply this in real time.
Okay, that was fantastic, Kat. Thank you so much for sharing that in such great detail. Enough with all of you how valuable it is to be able to break down every school that you're interested in by kind of curating a list like this for every school, right? Social factors, financial factors, academic factors. Think about what Kat is sharing with you for TCU, for example. These are the types of pieces of information you need to know about a school. When we have our college fair in October at the district college fair, I hope that you'll go and ask colleges these types of questions. I hope that you'll go online and find this information for yourself, because this is how you're going to make sure that you end up at a school that's going to be a good fit for you, right? Now, I don't have time for the official webinar to go through each one of these resources, but if you want to stay back after the official end of this webinar, which is one slide away, I promise to do a demo for anybody who wants to hang back, because these 3 sites right here are going to be invaluable as you begin to search for colleges, specifically colleges out of state. Okay, so hang back after the official end of the webinar, I'm going to go through a demo for anybody who wants to stay back. But these are 3 resources that are linked for you here that are going to be very helpful as you consider going to school out of state. WUI Savings Finder is the website that Kat mentioned earlier. This is where you're going to find all of those schools that have the reciprocity agreement with California that would give you a tuition discount. That's going to be a great place to start for looking for financially fit schools out of state. Secondly, College Raptor is a phenomenal research platform because not only will you be able to research colleges out of state, but you'll be able to find employment data and like degree data for specific majors in every state. And it'll show you the trends, how many people are earning engineering degrees in each state, how many jobs are opening up annually in each state. So this is a great one-stop shop to kind of link college fit with career fit and seeing if there are specific geographical areas that might be more beneficial for you based on what you want to study, right? And do for a living. And then thirdly, the third linked resource is the RAC directory. So as Kat mentioned earlier, she is on the executive board for RAC, right? The Regional Admission Counselor of California. And this directory is like a complete collection of every single school that participates in RAC. And these are all out-of-state universities and colleges. And it's a directory of all of these schools. And there's a one-pager for every single college that will give you in-depth details, kind of like what Kat was showing you on this slide right here. You get a lot of this kind of information, like a one-page for every single school that participates in RAC, okay? Not only that, there's an index at the beginning that will help you search for schools based on location, based on whether or not they offer they fully meet your financial need or not. There's a list to show you what schools have direct entry nursing or pre-nursing programs. So it's a great way for you to kind of like target in your search and explore out-of-state schools that you would have never considered, okay? So final tips before we end for tonight. Some final tips, please visit campuses if you can. Obviously, financially, it's going to be very hard. So go on virtual campus tours. I link here to a great website that you can go to where you can take a virtual campus tour in the comfort of your own home for free. Okay. They are going to ask for your information though. So you might get spammed with emails, but that's about it. Okay. That's the extent of the cost. Secondly, research financial aid opportunities at the school's website early on so that you know, like Kat said, are they going to guarantee merit scholarships simply by virtue of the fact that you have X GPA? Because that can help you determine the price of the school as well, right? Potentially based on your academic performance. Connect with current students at that school or alumni. If you know anybody who's gone to a school, talk to them about it. It's great to connect with people who have gone to that school. And students, if you want to connect with alumni, come visit your college and career counselor. I'm at Lisa Nickel High School, but come talk to your college and career center. We might be able to tap you into some previous students from your school, some graduates that we know of that have gone out of state if you want to connect with somebody, okay? Fourthly, connect with regional reps when possible. And that's referring back to that RAC directory that we're going to provide to all of you. There is the contact information for every single one of the reps for these schools that are out of state so that you can connect with them directly and have a conversation with them about some of your big questions, right? That's what they're there for. Fifthly, that's not even a word, but consider your long-term career goals. Like we have been saying, look at those career trends, look at those hiring trends, look at those job trends, and see where the work is going to maybe help determine where you might want to end up, right? Attend our college fair in October. We're going to have over 100 universities, many of which are going to be out of state, even international. This is a perfect opportunity for you to start asking those big questions so that you can really start curating that final list so that you can apply, right? And then please attend the college rep visits at your school. I don't know if you know this, but we have college reps coming into the College and Career Center all the time, especially in the fall. It's picking back up now in spring, but just to let you know, in the fall, there are college reps visiting your campus practically every day, definitely every week. So you should be going to those visits to meet with those college reps, to have one-on-one FaceTime with them, right? A lot of these reps that you're meeting with are probably going to be the ones who are reading your application when you apply. So to gain that relationship with them and to connect with them and to learn more about the school is invaluable. So please take advantage of that because students don't know about them or they don't know what they are. But now that you know that they exist, please go to them because it's a great way for you to connect with college reps and colleges that you might be interested in. Okay. That is all we have for you. We are sorry for keeping you a little bit over. We got way too enthusiastic, but thank you for sticking with us. For those of you who have to excuse yourself, know that you will have access to the recording and the slides. We will email that to you after today for anybody who is registered for the event. We're going to hang back for questions, and I'm also going to do a demo for anybody who wants to watch a demo of the websites, because I think it's important for you to see it in action. Okay. So let me let me open this up for questions before I subject you all to a demo of these resources. Does anybody have any questions? The chat should be available, or the Q&A. So I have a question in the Q&A. Let's see here. In our family's experience, some WUWI schools use WUWI as a scholarship and not a guarantee. How can we find out which colleges do this and are not open to all WUWI eligible students? Okay, so I think the first place to look would be on the WUWI Savings Finder website to see, firstly, if there are any additional requirements. But like Kat mentioned earlier, it would be good to go to the school's website so that you can see if it is a scholarship, for example, right, versus some kind of a guarantee. Kat, I'll let you speak more to this as I pull up the website.
Yeah, typically, how WUI works, the schools kind of negotiate what that tuition reduction would be. So typically it's about 150% of that school's in-state tuition. So I'm not sure on the case of Oregon State necessarily, obviously, since I don't work there and I haven't worked for a WUI school in a couple years. But honestly, my best advice would be to get to know the admission reps at all of the WUI schools that you might be interested in, just to make sure that there aren't any surprises about how they might do it, right? They might have a different terminology, or they might administer it a different way, or it might not be guaranteed, right? Whereas you would think most WUI schools, it is guaranteed. So best case is look at the WUI website and still follow up with the representative from each school.
Perfect. And with that, let's look at the WUWI website, right? So this is where you would go. This is what we link to for you to search WUWI schools. As you can see, you can search by specific states. So let's say you're interested in going to Colorado. A lot of students want to go to Hawaii for University of Hawaii. I'll just choose some states, right? From there, you can select the type of degree that you're looking for, bachelor's degree, et cetera, right? And what it'll do is it'll show you the schools that participate in WUWI in those states. And it'll even give you a quick at a glance at the WUWI tuition, so you can see how much it'll cost. Just for context and comparison, a Cal State is about $8,000 a year for tuition only, and a UC is about $14,000 a year. Okay, so that is for something for you to have in the back of your head as you're comparing them to the cost of some of these schools, right? And as you can see here, Adams State in Colorado, $12,000. University of Colorado, Colorado Springs, 20,000. And if we click on a school, it'll give you more details about WUWI at that school. You'll see all of the eligible majors. So if you want that WUWI discount, you're going to have to choose one of the eligible majors. And as you can see, it's pretty much all the majors at this school, right? It's pretty exhaustive. And on the right-hand side, you'll see how much you would save through WUWI, right? The WUWI tuition is 20,000 compared to non-resident, which would be 28,000 at University of Colorado, Colorado Springs. From there, you'll see the minimum high school GPA required, minimum SAT if that's requirement, and then it'll give you some more details. But like Kat said, we're not going to trust the third party source, right? We have to go to the school's website, and they link to the school's website on the WUWI page. And that'll take you to the WUWI page, or the school's website, where you can look up the WUWI program, right, for that school. And this will give you a little bit more information, because it'll usually direct you to the school's financial aid page, where you can look up scholarship opportunities. And in this case, it might end up being, like you said, kind of like a WUWI scholarship, right? It will just depend. So this is how you can use the WUWI website to look up schools based on where you might want to end up and comparing WUWI tuition. Okay, so a great resource to use. Any other things I should point out for this website, Kat, before I move on?
I think you covered the basics.
Okay.
Yeah, that's typically what I walked through with students as I was, when I worked for a WUI school, all the things to keep an eye out for. It's mainly the majors.
Yeah. Yes, definitely the majors. because ASU does participate in WUI, but the main campus, there are like no qualifying majors for that
Yeah.
campus, right? So something to consider. Now, the second resource that I shared with you that I like love when we're talking about, again, looking for schools that align with kind of outcomes and jobs and stuff like that for my families who are concerned about that. College Raptor is amazing. On this website, your student will answer, or if you're a student, you'll answer all sorts of questions about your academic profile, your family finances, so that it can match you to schools based on everything that you want out of the school. And I have a demo account that matched me to schools based on everything that I told it about myself, right? From there, you will be able to see how it matches with you academically, admissions wise, and financially. But what I love about this, okay, let me click on a school. I'm going to click on Washington State University, okay? When you look at the school, if you're thinking out of state, because this is what the webinar is all about, now you're going to see what my password is. No, you're not. But I have to remember my password. Give me just a second. There we go. Okay, so when you click on the school, going back to this, when you click on the school, you're going to be able to do some really cool career research on the area. Okay, so Washington State University is in Corvallis, Washington. A couple things, you'll be able to see where it is. You'll be able to see comparable colleges. You'll be able to see nearby colleges. So if you are somebody who's really committed to going to Washington, this is a great tool to use to see what your other options are in that 250-mile radius, right? But what I love about this site is if you go up, you can see the admissions, stats, everything that Kat told you to look up earlier, right? Academically, like admissions, stats, average GPA, average test scores of students getting in, that's all on this platform. But what I want you to do is click on majors. And if you are a student who knows what you might want to study, let's say you want to get into mechanical engineering, you'll see here the most popular and populated majors at the school. At Washington State, 466, right? Psych majors, for example. So you can get a sense, okay, well, this is popular at this school. It's a big deal at this school. But when you click on any of the majors that are popular at the school, you'll get stats like rankings of best mechanical engineering programs in the country. Don't pay crazy attention to rankings, okay? But if you want the rankings, they are here, right? But then what you can do is you can look at, I'm going to scroll down, you can look at the popularity of mechanical engineering. The darker the color, the higher the number. And as you can see, California is granting a ton of mechanical engineering degrees. So we're doing something big in California with mechanical engineering as far as degree granting goes. But you'll also see that Texas is high up in there. Colorado's there. Florida's there. New York, Pennsylvania, Minnesota, right? Massachusetts, New Jersey, Virginia. So there are other states that are granting a ton of mechanical engineering degrees. And when I see that, I'm thinking, okay, there might be additional opportunities at those universities as well for internships, for networking, for job opportunities. But this is just the tip of the iceberg because this is just talking about the majors, right? So if you scroll down on this website, they'll show you data on median salary and annual job openings for careers for that major. And let's say you are interested in becoming an aerospace engineer, right? If you click on that, this is what will take you to what is similar to what I showed you earlier, which is the kind of the geographic breakdown of how popular those careers are. First of all, you see projected growth rate of that career, which is great to know. But then what you can do is scroll down and you'll be able to, oh, wait, no. Let me find it. Sorry to make you dizzy while I scroll. You will be able to click on a specific career and look at demographic. I'm going to get to it, I promise. I'm going to get to it because there was something I wanted to show you. Oh, yes, here it is. Okay, so projected employment for all of the US is a 6.1% increase. So this is actually on par with the national job growth rate. So that's good, right? Aerospace engineers are getting jobs. We love that. But if you want to look at specific states, let's say that your student really wants to go to Alabama. You can pull up Alabama and you can see what the projected employment is in Alabama for mechanical engineering or aerospace engineering. And you'll see here that it's 3.1%, which is below that average kind of 6% growth rate for the next 10 years, right? So this is something you can use to drive your decision making as you're looking for schools, as you're feeling concerned about what your job opportunities are when you graduate, right? Compared to a state like Michigan, which has no change in growth compared to Minnesota, which has a 2.6 change in growth, right? So this is going to be a great tool for you to use as you strategize where that growth is going to happen in that area that you want to pursue. Okay. And then one final resource before we go, I cannot leave without showing you this. Can you all see the rack directory on the screen? Kat, can you see it? Yes. Okay, perfect. All right. So this is the rack directory I was talking about, and this is a directory of all of those out-of-state schools that participate in rack. These are out-of-state schools, all of them. There's an index that will show you all the schools alphabetically. If you click on any of these, it'll take you directly to that school's page, to that one pager I was telling you about. That'll give you a breakdown on what that school is known for, you know, what their bread and butter is, what they're good at. You'll see what kind of institution it is, the setting, all of those social, academic, and financial pieces will be listed on this page, right? So I guess not so much financial per se, but a lot of social and academic pieces. You'll see their points of pride, and then you'll see who their representative is so that you can contact their admissions rep directly. Now, going back to the index, though, just to help you with your search, you can search by region, right? If you're interested in a specific region, you can search by private universities versus public universities out of state. You can search for small, mid-size, or large schools if you know what kind of size school you want to be at. You can search for rural, suburban versus urban campuses if you know what kind of environment you want to be in for social fit. You can search for Division 1, 2, and 3 athletics if that's something that you really want to have access to at the college. You can search to see if it's a Tier 1 research institution if you're interested in pursuing undergraduate research or research after the fact or pursuing a PhD or a master's degree. You can see religious affiliation in liberal arts colleges. If the school provides, if the school meets your full financial need. So some of these schools will meet the family's full financial need by way of giving loans and scholarships. And sometimes you'll see a list of schools that sometimes meet the full need of students. And then you'll see a list of the WUI schools that are part of RAC. And then need blind admissions means that they are not looking at how much you can afford to pay as they're deciding whether or not they're going to accept you into the program, right? You can look at schools that are test optional versus test free or sometimes test optional. And then for my nursing students out there, there's even a list of direct entry nursing programs out of state and pre-nursing programs. So like we said earlier, nursing is very impacted in the state of California, but if you look at a state, there are opportunities. I know a student who got into Belmont University with a full ride for direct entry nursing, right? So it is a possibility. We just have to be adventurous and be willing to look elsewhere. Okay. So I just wanted to share that with you because it's such an invaluable resource. But with that, I will give us like a couple more minutes if you have any questions. If not, you are welcome to enjoy your Wednesday evening, and we will provide you with all of these resources after tonight. Thank you so much for being with us. We'll hang back for a couple minutes for questions. And Kat, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your expertise and your wisdom and everything that you shared with us this evening. It made the webinar because I think students and families needed to hear that perspective, both from a professional who works in out-of-state admissions, but also as somebody who went to school out of state from California. So thank you.
Of course. Thank you all so much for having me.
Awesome. All right, folks. Any other questions for tonight? Thank you so much for attending. You have a wonderful evening. You're welcome to log off if you don't have any questions. I'm not seeing anything in the Q&A. Let's see. Can you talk a bit about rolling versus early admission and the difference between early committed and non-committed? Kat, do you want to speak to that?
Yes. So when I think of rolling admission, so these are going to be the schools that don't have strict deadlines. So if you browse a school and they say, oh, we have early action or this specific deadline, in November, odds are they're not rolling. Usually rolling means they get applications every single day and they kind of have their workflow where they're constantly reviewing applications and they're constantly releasing decisions. And so you will find out often usually earlier in the process rather than maybe waiting for all the decisions to be released in December or January or again in March and April, right? So that's kind of the simplest way to put rolling. Now, the difference between something like early admissions. So some schools will have a round called early action. Typically, this means you're applying a little bit earlier in the year, right? And that's comparatively compared to regular decision, which would be a later deadline, right? So often schools will have an early or fall deadline and then a regular or kind of spring deadline. So the main difference is, do you want to hear back early, right? Do you have the capacity to complete all of these applications early, right? As you build your list, your job is to kind of decide, okay, how many colleges am I going to even apply to? Once you've answered that question, you can kind of determine how many applications can I complete in the summer or in the fall. Sometimes it gets overwhelming and you might not be able to complete all of the applications in time. And so it would be wise to figure out which schools you can apply to in that regular round. Now, when you apply early, some schools will have a binding option and a non-binding option. And so if you're interested in a school and you're fully committed and you have looked at the finances and you are willing to pay full price, or maybe they have language that guarantees scholarship, so you know you can commit to that school because they do guarantee merit. Now, I wouldn't apply to a university in a binding manner if you if you can't see the financial aid packages, right? If you're not guaranteed that merit. So that's something that you'd have to talk through with the admissions counselor, with your high school counselor, just to make sure that you have all the information before you commit in a binding plan. But that's kind of the high level view of that answer. I hope that made sense.
Thank you. That was a very in-depth answer. Okay, somebody asked how students find out which college admissions reps will be on their campus during a given week. It depends on the school. At Elisa, we do morning announcements and we send out messages on Canvas. So depending on the school that you're at, the mode of messaging will be a little bit different. You can always visit your school's college and career center to see if there are any upcoming visits and to see how that's communicated out at your school, though. Okay, and just to let you know, spring visits are dying down a little bit. The hot time for college rep visits will be in the fall. So when you return to school in the fall, there will be a lot of college rep visits across our high school campuses. And that's also posted usually on our guidance webpage on the school website as well. Okay. But there are sporadic visits here and there. We have a school from Scotland visiting Elisa Nagel High School on April 18th, a Friday. So please, if you're an Elisa student, come to that at lunch and explore an international school. But yeah, it'll depend on the school. Okay, wonderful. All right. Well, thank you all so much for hanging back with us. Thank you for your amazing questions. Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Nicole, for being here. We are going to call it an evening so that you can all go enjoy your Wednesday evening, and you can expect materials from us this week after we wrap up this recording for tonight. Thank you so much for being with us, everybody. Have a great night. Bye, everybody.